Hi everyone, my name is Devinder Sodhi and I am one of the engineers over at Qt. I just wanted to create a recording for you to sort of walk you through the installation for Qt for MCUs. This is version 1.3. I have most of it done and there are a lot of slow steps, so I am going to walk through it with the context that I already have it ready. But I did want to make sure that if you have any issues with it, you have sort of a clear guide on how to go about installing this. One thing I would like to point out that you can actually find documentation for this pretty easily online. It's this easy if you just plug it into Google. There's pretty comprehensive documentation for Qt for MCUs. It not only tells you just about everything you need to know. Everything I needed to know came from here for what's new in it, what you need to have in order to install Qt for MCU. Of course, other than the license, all of the API references, any of the tools that you might need. In addition, it also has a bunch of demos and tutorials and like how to actually make use of them and which boards that they're useful on. Okay, so I guess let's start with step one. You need to have a Qt for MCU license. If you don't have that, you're still right there. You're not going to have your Qt for MCU is not going to show up in your installer if you don't have the appropriate license for it. So if you do have it, and I'm assuming you're using Qt for MCU, you're probably either using the Qt installer for like the second, third time, or whatever it is, or you're using it for the first time. In either case, you're going to have to install from your Qt account, the installation of the actual Qt licenses. I have a bunch of them. But the Qt Online installer is what you really want. Okay, so I already have the Qt Online installer installed. I like to use the Qt maintenance tool to sort of highlight exactly where uh, what you need, what pieces of software you need from the list of available softwares, and what you should expect to see. This, if you're doing this for the very first time, these are basically the same exact steps you'd be viewing anyway. The only difference is you'd also be installing the Qt components in addition to the MCU stuff. Um, if you have any comments, please feel free. Like if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments as well. Then we'll try to get to you as quickly as possible. I expect that this is pretty straightforward. When you download Qt, you have the Qt installer, and then the Qt maintenance tool or the Qt installer both allow you sort of to get to this main setup screen, and from there, we're just going to want to add, in our case, Qt MCU 1.3. That's the current version. Now, one thing while this is loading, I would like to point out, if you already have Qt for MCU version 1.1, version 1.2 even, you might have some artifacts from like the older installs. One thing that I had was set the QUL dir from my previous install in my environment. It was getting in the way of getting things done right. That was something that I had to get rid of. Um, Also, a bunch of my uh, install stuff was pointing to Qt for MCU 1.1. You'll note that we'll actually want to set everything to whatever the latest version it is that you want to use. Okay, so in our case, of course, if you are going to be, sorry, there we go, downloading Qt for MCU version 1.3, we would like the following things. If you've been following the product, you know that we have support for a few new boards now. The 1060, the 1064 from NXP just came by. I believe the Renaissance board is also a relatively new addition. Um, from version 1.1, 1.2, you'll recognize the 1050 board, um, as well as the L4R9 boards and the F469 boards, I believe, was also uh, all available. Okay, so this is just a list of boards. What you want to do, I mean, definitely you want to have the install for the desktop available for you. This will allow you to do some emulation. Even if you don't have a particular board in mind yet, you can at least get started. And then, in addition, you want to be able to grab any of these NXP, uh, or like Renaissance or STM boards, whichever one that you're looking to work on. Now, if you're working with some specialized board that you're working with the Qt R&D team with, you might have an extra step here. For most boards, in most cases, you already know that you're going to be using one of these available boards, and all you need to do is you need to, come down to this MCU, whatever your latest version is, pull in definitely the desktop, and in addition, the boards that you care about. The boards that I care about right now are these, the STM 32F769 boards, the 1050, 1060, and then the L409. In fact, I don't even think I have the 1060, but still, I have it. In addition to that, you'll notice that there's these third-party tools. The ARM compiler you definitely need. This guy is an essential. Any of the SDKs in addition to that you might require to get your board running are also listed here. In my case, of course, the 1060 matters, the 1050 matters. The STM is for all of the STM F4 and F7 type chips. I don't really deal with the Cube chips, so I don't have either of those. Oh, sorry, the 87 and the 87 chips. So I don't have none of those. I guess all of them are called Cube, so my mistake on that. Anyway, once you do that, you'll hit next on your install, and it'll start installing the components that you need. The reason I'm not doing that right now is because I originally made this video with that, and all it amounted to was me deleting about 20 minutes worth of progress bar filling up. Okay, so once you're done with that, I usually, because of superstition mostly, like to restart my machine to make sure that the Qt Creator is on the same page. One more thing I forgot to mention, if you're pulling the latest version of the Qt Creator, you also want to go into updating your components, the same exact thing with your Qt maintenance tool. And you want to update to the latest version of Qt Creator. Qt Creator is your IDE of choice, and you like all of the functionality that helps you kind of navigate through things that you'd be doing in command line normally, or like for maybe Visual Studio. I believe we have support for that to an extent. But if you don't want to be running CMake make and all that stuff manually, and you want to make use of Qt Creator and use all of its integrations, I strongly recommend. And in fact, I think you'll be a lot. Yeah, things will generally, just building up your kits and everything will be a lot easier if you just sort of pull this and download the latest version of Qt Creator. Okay, so get that out of the way. There's two things we have in mind now. So first, get the latest version of Qt Creator. Second, get the MCU files that you care about all downloaded and installed. Me personally, I like to do a restart after that, but I don't think we really need to. It's just my standard operating procedure from Lord knows how far back when, and so I shared it. Anyway, moving on, you'll come on to Qt Creator. Let me clean out these projects, kind of show you how you'll start out. You should, now that you have like the latest version of Qt Creator and also your MCU stuff installed, realize that you also need to install the MCU plugin. There is an MCU plugin that you can get with the About page, I believe. Oh, sorry. Next, okay, so go to Help, go to About Plugins, you find the one that says MCU, you make sure that this guy is on. Now, I'm going to lean back to the documentation a little bit just to help me out, because there's a couple of steps to this, and you don't always remember it off the top of your head. Okay, so there should be a getting started page right here, right? Let's see, quick starter guide. Okay, setting up your development environment. You definitely need the MSVC compiler 19.6, which is Visual Studio 2017, 15.9.9 or newer. this is a requirement. Like if you're going to do any of the work with MCU 1.3 or further, you need to have this compiler already installed. Right now, MCU projects are all based on Windows, and the compiler of choice is the Visual Studio, the Visual compiler, the Microsoft Visual compiler. CMake 3.13 or newer. If you don't have this, Qt update kit does provide you with it, so you would just add that in there in your update list, and then make sure that you also get that going. Um, as I was just telling you, configuring the Qt Creator IDE. This will, if you have a much older version of Qt Creator IDE, I don't even know if these plugins will show up. Certainly, some of the tool option stuff won't show up. First thing you'll want to do after you have everything installed is you want to configure your Qt Creator IDE. Of course, making sure that you have these prerequisites. Okay. Now, after that, just like these first steps just basically show you to activate the plugin that I just mentioned, the MCU support plugin. Just to show you one more time, you make sure that you have that, and you're good to go. Okay, experimental is fine. That's where we are at right now. Once that's enabled, next thing to do is to build and run your application on the MCUs. You have to create a kit. This used to be a much more involved process back in 1.1 and 1.0. You had to sort of build up your own kits from scratch using, there were still things to help you out, but uh, we really simplified this process. So let's literally follow these directions down to the T, right? Like let's select Tools, Options, Devices, MCU. Okay, Tools, Options, Devices, MCU. And now you'll notice once you get to the screen that you have a bunch of targets that you can build kits for. This is sort of an automated process. One of the things that's really nice here is that this path should be pointing to your MCU main folder path. If that's not the case, you'll get a little error over here. It'll say, if the path's valid, and then also if it's found the bin that it's the executable that it's looking for. And so after that's done, this here will list all of that. If you remember from our list of downloaded packages, the MCU options that we chose, we had a bunch of them in there that were already ticked. These are mine that are already ticked. And in generally, what will happen is that once you select, let's say, the 1060s one that I haven't done yet, I guess. Yeah, see, the 1050 is already done, so you can't create a new kit. You can always remove and recreate. I just want to create a brand new one for you, so I'm not missing any pieces. Okay, so here's one thing, right? Like it says that you need the GNU chain. I installed the GNU ARM embedded toolchain in my C drive at this location. We did just download that with Qt packages as well. We can use either or. Another thing that you will need with the NXP boards, and this, if you look in the docs specifically for loading the NXP boards, you'll notice and working with them, you'll find out that you need to install this MCU Espresso IDE, which you can get off their website. It's free. If you have an NXP board, you probably have already done this. And similarly, this is incorrect, right? The path exists, but it's not really pointing to anything for the 1060 board. And in fact, for the 1050 board, notice that I'm going to Qt Tools, Qt MCU, NXP, SDK, this, and this is actually, it wasn't detected right away, so you'd have to correct it's a valid path, but this is actually part of the SDK stuff that I've downloaded, right? So this is part of the Qt installer stuff that came with the installation that we downloaded. So if you come across a situation, I'm just trying to give you all of the tips and tricks that you might need in order to, kind of get around any hurdles that I faced or that you might face during this install process. Relatively easy, but there are a couple gotchas. So, in this case, you want to make sure you go to that appropriate file path. And in fact, I don't think that's the right one, because the 1051 was that. Tools, Qt MCUs, NXP. Okay, so in the case of 1060, it would be C, tools, Qt MCU, NXP. Okay, and notice that I also have this ARM path to the ARM GCC compiler. This path, if I didn't already have like the correct, if I didn't already have the ARM GCC package installed, um, I would have pointed to that. I think in the future what I'll probably do is point it to that. They're both valid paths. This one actually comes with Qt, so you won't make the mistake, because it is very easy, because there is like a very specific version of it that you want. So if you get it from Qt directly, just use that one. Okay, this is one of those places where you can save yourself some headache rather than getting like a Q4 2019 versus a Q3 2019 version of the same ARM embedded toolchain. You just get the right one directly if you install it as a third-party install, and you just point to it in Qt tools under MCUs, and then the ARM or like the NXP or the STM, whatever it is. Okay. So once you set that up, you can create a kit. To create a kit, it just creates a kit for you. So what does that mean, right? These kits, actually, we have a bunch of them. I have a bunch of them because I have different compilers, different requirements for different times that I'm using these things. But let's take a quick look at. Oh, I'm not even sure that one's set up. Okay. So let's take a quick look at this one. So the automatic desktop kit. What it gave me was the C++, the C and the C++ compiler set to the Microsoft Visual compiler. It's got the debugger set to the CDB. That's just the Windows debugger that I have set. I have a couple of these pads that point to like the Qt creator bin. That's fine. The QULDR, which is described as like the main path in CMake for all of your MCU needs. That's appropriately pointed to 1.3, which is what we want. There's a few more CMake configuration things that are set up automatically for you. You used to have to do all of this manually. Now it's just all done automatically for you. Okay, so with all of this set, the next piece, of course, is to try to run one of these projects for yourself, right? And in fact, I have a 1050 board handy that I'm not going to be able to show you, but you can kind of take my word for it that I tested everything both on desktop and then on my 1050 board and made sure that the exact same program was showing up on the screen. Okay, so what's the simplest thing I can do here? I can create a new project, right? So here's another thing that you kind of learn here is that you can now create projects, MCU projects, directly using the Qt Creator. I think this has been around for a couple of versions now, but it's a nice little thing that gives you all of the the required files and the setup of the folder structure that you require. Okay, test. That's my name. And you can select your kits like usual. I like to deselect them all most of the time. In this case, we'll set up these two guys because I know that will work. Okay, and it's really as simple as that. In the case of this really simple salmon, I don't know if you like salmon as a color, but we need to run this guy to demonstrate that you can do a simple hello world application. It builds and it runs, and this is sort of our PC simulated version of what would you expect to see on your MCU screen. I have tested this program again with the 1050 board, and there were a couple things that I wanted to mention about that. Now, for each of the different board types that you run, there's going to be slightly different documentation to get things running. And all of the things that I've, by the way, mentioned for Keep for MCU, all of this information is really just beautifully done. With the documentation engineers did a really, really good job of just putting it all in one place and kind of giving you everything that I've just talked about in a nice written package. Again, it's doc.qt.io/Keep for MCUs, and is the main page /index. And if you Google it just like I did in the beginning of this video, docs Qt for MCU 1.3, it'll show up, or whatever the latest version is. Again, the thing I want to really talk about is, well, first, it'll tell you, for example, if you want to run an NXP board, it'll tell you want the Qt for MCU SDK. We download that. We have the latest version of Qt Creator. I prefer to have the latest one, especially if you're going with the latest version of the MCU, because as the for each of the iterations of the MCU project, we're adding more and more um, sort of facilities to help make the experience better. And when you match up that latest version of Qt for MCU to that latest version of Qt Creator, you tend to have the best experience. Of course, this is that specific ARM toolchain that I was talking to you about. This toolchain, the Q3 update, is the one that comes with it as part of your third-party kit. This is the MCU Expresso link, in case you were wondering where that was all about. All of that information is right here. Flashing is, of course, how do you flash your actual board? And one of the things that is very easy to trip up is that if you don't have the right firmware for the flashing, right? Your default firmware is not necessarily going to be the right one for getting Qt4MCUs to run. Follow these directions. I've done them, and I've definitely tried, kind of skipping them and just trying to get things working, and then I ended up right back here to actually having to follow them correctly. And these directions, so if you worked on 1.1 or 1.0, these directions may have changed since that time. So if your board worked perfectly fine for MCU 1.0, but it's not working for 1.3, it's a really good idea to kind of follow through the directions from 1.3 all the way through. You might find something like, maybe the flash firmware is slightly different or something like that. Either way, it's not going to hurt to actually follow all of the directions, especially when they're so beautifully laid out for you on these docs page. I don't think you can go wrong with that. Okay, so in addition, when you're setting up your own board, what I'd like to talk about really quickly is that setting up your development environment for your board. You have all these directions to go to that devices, that MCU page that we just went over in tools, to create the kit. Make sure that you have all of the appropriate paths for your specific board. Make sure if you downloaded those paths, you're pointing to them correctly. It's a common pitfall. If you're not pointing to the right tool chain, you're not going to get your code working. Following that, there's a couple different ways to sort of run things. Of course, you can create your binaries a couple different ways. One of the more we have a bunch of demos for them. One of the more interesting things is actually getting a debug running. I think debug is still a little bit of work in process, but what I have been able to do is generate the just from Qt Creator, generate the get the debugger going. You have to have Redlink sort of working in the background. You have to have your ARM. Well, this is the manual way of doing it. You can get your ARM debugger GDB running with your actual binary, or directly from Qt Creator. You just hit the play button and it'll run it for you. Right? You hit the debugger, it'll run it for you. Um, in fact, I don't believe if I'm in debug mode, that I don't think the option's even available right now. But yeah, if you hit play in this case and your board's connected and you have it on the you have that. I believe you might still need that red lit thing going. Um, but you hit play and it'll actually push the files directly to your board. As long as your board is connected, it has the correct firmware, all of that works all the way through. That's it. And so that was my video to explain basically uh, in short, simple steps with some tips and tricks for what to avoid, what to do for getting your Qt project up and going. There's more interesting projects that we can maybe make more videos about, like how to get them running. If you are going to use any of these example projects and you have a board running, just make sure that you're running it for the correct board. Of course, for the PC emulation, you can run any of them, but let's say if this specific demo doesn't support your board, you might need to do some tweaking yourself to get it working because it might not have been originally made for your board. Of course, you can, depending on your level of uh, energy, you can adapt these different projects to take advantage of only the piece of the components and like the features of your specific board. Okay, um, it's one of the more interesting ones. Oh, it's actually going to try to run it on my. Wish I had a camera for you. Because this is actually going to try to run it on my board. So now that it's started, I kind of want to make sure that it runs, and maybe I'll throw in a picture at the end. Actually, I'm not even sure I have the piece. You know what? Let me. Oh yeah, doesn't exist, right? Let's try to get it running for desktop real quick. Oh, there we go. All right, so that's your little desktop demo. I will try to get an actual camera on a board next time. Maybe do some board demos based on these things that we've seen. Maybe get a couple extra boards just so I can demonstrate a few more of those. But that's all I have for now. And thank you for watching. Have a good one.